The ICE agents who killed a person in Maine yesterday were reportedly not using body-worn cameras, and that's despite DHS officials coming to Congress and repeatedly saying over the last few months that they want to expand body camera usage. Does there need to be accountability on DHS from Congress here?
I don't know anything about this event. Okay, I was a little busy yesterday, so I'm going to reserve judgment. I know that there was a tragic shooting, and I'm not going to comment on it because I don't know. And you guys can mock me for not knowing that.
I'm not going to mock you for it, Mike. I'm just going to call you a liar because that's what you are. You know exactly what happened yesterday.
House Speaker Mike Johnson, or MAGA Mike as he is referred to on the Meidas network, was tarnished as a liar after being asked about the recent fatal shooting by an ICE agent in Biddeford, Maine. Specifically, Johnson was asked why the agent involved was apparently not wearing a body camera. And Johnson, need I remind you, the Republican Speaker of the House whose governance oversees the enormous amount of ICE funding, something he's spoke about at length and voted on, gave a non-answer that was met with immense scrutiny.
I'm not going to mock you for it, Mike. I'm just going to call you a liar because that's what you are. You know exactly what happened yesterday. You know what happened in Minneapolis. You understand that un-American actions are continuing to accelerate across America while Susan Collins votes for $70 billion in ICE funding that has no reforms attached to it. You have Americans being gunned down in the streets of Minneapolis by masked men. That's un-American. You have fathers, husbands, grandfathers being gunned down in Houston, gunned down in the street for no reason in Biddeford, Maine, and the killers whisked away. No justice, no investigations, no real investigations allowed by local authorities who have seen their city streets being turned into killing zones. And you don't know about that, Mike? What do you know about? You know about, oh my God, you know about $350 billion that you say is needed to fight communism in America? Do you know how dangerous you sound, Mike? I saw conservative commentators who are still conservative, unlike you, unlike the president, unlike so many other Republicans that I used to work with in Congress, saying every conservative should be afraid when a Speaker of the House says we want to use $350 billion against Americans. People that you call communists because they believe in more affordable health care.
The Speaker, fresh from a recent recess after his party couldn't get the votes needed to pass a bill that included the politically toxic SAVE Act, was once again out here telling the American people how hard he's working. Remember when he did that a few months back and how that went over?
And here in Washington, the work has gone on in earnest as well. People keep commenting to me, you look so tired on TV. I am so tired because we're not sleeping a lot. We're working overtime. Here in Washington, our House committees have continued to conference together and do all the work we can to ensure legislation is ready for the floor for action as soon as we get back to legislative session.
And he went on to respond to a question about the ICE shooting with, quote, "I'm not going to comment on it because I don't know, and you guys can mock me for that. I worked about 22 hours in the last few days, and I did not get the briefing on that yet." Don't worry, Mike. Nobody needs to mock you. The statement is doing an excellent job of embarrassing itself.
Everybody needs to understand these crazy little mini Mamdanis who are popping up all around the country, they are a danger to you and your family. This is not a game. If they promise you free stuff, there is far more beneath those promises that even some of these people do not understand themselves. And so we are here as the Republican Party to stand on the founding principles of the greatest nation in the history of the world. It is our duty to do that. And we're doing it on behalf of all of you, even the journalists who don't agree with our policies all the time. You better agree on these principles because it's what keeps you free. By the way, it's what keeps the press free, okay? This is essential for your well-being and your family. This is not a game. This is not our father's Democrat Party. We're not arguing over marginal tax rates anymore. We're arguing over whether or not freedom is going to survive. And that's why we're so serious about this. Look, I'm a happy warrior, man. I like to get up and have fun, but this is not a fun time. We're in a war. We're in a philosophical war to save the greatest nation in the history of the world. And we take it very seriously.
You see, you're the Speaker of the House, the man second in line to the presidency after the Vice President, the leader responsible for deciding which legislation receives a vote. And when he is asked about another person being killed during an immigration enforcement operation carried out by an agency that his party has just showered with billions of dollars, his response is essentially, sorry, I've been busy. Busy doing what, Mike? Funding them? Because Johnson's claimed lack of knowledge would be slightly more understandable if he were just, I don't know, an unrelated citizen who had just spent the morning golfing, you know, kind of like the president. But he's the most powerful member of the House of Representatives, right? There's a reason he's held to a different standard. His party has made ICE enforcement one of its central domestic priorities.
But it all goes back to the Dems, who want to continually attack ICE and tell people to evade them, tell people don't comply, tell people to resist, and tell people ICE isn't a real law enforcement agency. You and I talked about this 1.5 years ago, Laura. I said if the hateful rhetoric didn't stop, there will be bloodshed. And I'm saying it right now. There's still going to be more bloodshed unless they shut their mouth and let ICE enforce the laws that they enacted.
He personally helped move legislation providing nearly $70 billion in additional immigration enforcement funding. This on top of the fact that the White House said approximately $38 billion would go to ICE, with another $26 billion for Border Patrol and $5 billion for unforeseen costs. I mean, that funding is designed to sustain Trump's deportation operation for the next 3 years, which is leading to incidents like this. So Johnson very much does know about ICE. He knows where its money is coming from. He knows how much they are getting, and he knows how long the funding lasts, as well as the political promises it is intended to fulfill. So he apparently knows everything about ICE except what ICE is doing with all that money. And his answer very much seemed to get under the skin of MSNBC's Joe Scarborough, who had this to say. Scarborough argued that Johnson already knew about a broader pattern of controversial ICE operations and fatal encounters, even if he had not yet received a specific briefing on the Maine shooting.
Time and time again in American streets. And what happens afterwards? The killers are whisked away. The killers are whisked away, and they're protected from justice, just like King George III would surely protect royal troops that gunned down patriots 250 years ago. Whisk them away from the scene of the crime where the patriots are gunned down. Here, whisking these masked federalists without cause. I want to know, what does Ken Paxton think about a Hispanic father, a Hispanic grandfather, a man who'd been in America for over 30 years, misidentified and shot to death in the street of Houston? What does Ken Paxton think about that? What does Susan Collins say? I'm sure she's disturbed. Or what's her word? What's her word? What'd she say?
Concerned.
I'm concerned. Maybe it's concerned.
They're all concerned.
I'm sure she's concerned.
I would be concerned
about what happened in the streets of Maine. A sweet, kind, young man that
Beautiful
community
family.
members said was so kind, so loving, getting gunned down
in front of his little girl
through a car window in front of his family.
And that distinction matters here, right? Because it may be entirely possible that Mike Johnson had not yet read the detailed briefing about this one incident at the exact moment he was questioned. But Republicans, they're often out here immediately tarnishing anyone who comes into contact with ICE as radical terrorists. If you remember, Kristi Noem did this very thing. But it also doesn't mean that he was unaware of the larger accountability crisis surrounding immigration enforcement. Johnson knew that Democrats had demanded reforms. He knew that those proposals included body camera requirements, visible identification, restrictions on masks, judicial warrants before entering private property, and stronger oversight of the use of force. He also knew fine well that Republicans rejected most of those demands and approved funding with virtually no strings attached.
My mom is 96 years old, and she says she's never seen anything this barbaric in her whole lifetime. Never seen this type of cruelty that they treat our people worse than animals.
Why was it important for her to come here this morning?
Para pedir por él que su alma descanse en paz, que Dios lo perdone y le dé fuerzas a su familia.
How much pain has this killing brought to the Houston community?
No tiene precio no tiene límite.
There's no number or limit that you can describe the amount of pain that it has caused the community.
Nunca se había visto algo así tan tremendo, tan inhumano.
It'd be different if they were doing something evil or some type of crime, but to take people out of just their work is what gets to her.
So when Johnson's out here saying, I don't know, he is framing the issue as though the public is asking him to, I don't know, reconstruct one confusing incident from scratch. But the real question is broader. Why did you give an agency tens of billions of dollars without requiring the basic safeguards that make incidents like this easier to investigate? The Republican argument is that ICE needs enormous resources because immigration enforcement is a national emergency. But don't emergencies then require more oversight? I mean, when the government gives armed federal agents expanded resources, expanded staffing, an explicit mandate to conduct mass enforcement operations across the United States, Congress does not then get to act surprised when those operations produce confrontations, injuries, and deaths like this.
3 men were killed in ICE encounters in less than a week. As a result, DHS announced that it would end vehicle stops, and then President Trump urged them to change their position. Can you confirm whether vehicle stops are back on, and is the administration doing anything more to prevent these kinds of deaths, maybe accelerating distribution of body cameras, which weren't present in this case?
So a couple of things. Vehicle stops are continuing. Verbal guidance has been given to all field offices across the country by the Department of Homeland Security. The President and the Secretary of Homeland Security are on the same page that vehicle stops are a necessary tool that ICE agents need in order to continue their deportation campaign of the worst illegal alien criminals from our country. With respect to body cameras, I know there's been some questions about that in recent days. Over half of all ICE field offices now do have body cameras, and the remainder of the field offices are expected within 60 days. It's been a slower rollout than we would have hoped, but that's because of the Democrats' decision to shut down DHS for several weeks. So we expect to fully execute on the promise of body cams to all field offices across the country very soon.
The funding package passed the House by 215 votes to 212, including nearly $70 billion for immigration enforcement over 3 years, which also came on top of almost $140 billion that the Republican-controlled Congress had already provided to ICE and Customs and Border Protection through an earlier tax and spending law. Reuters reported that the agencies already possessed roughly $100 billion in unspent funds from the previous package when Republicans approved all this additional funding. So, yeah, I think they can afford to ensure that body cams are mandated. And Mike Johnson, he knows this. He knows a lot more than he is letting on. He has provided tens of billions of dollars to an armed federal agency, an agency that's decisions have being called into question, not just by Democrats, but fellow Republicans. It's his business to understand how that agency operates. Yet the Republican position increasingly appears to be give ICE the benefit of every doubt and the public the benefit of no evidence. And in the tragic instance like this, when someone dies, well, let's please patiently wait on Mike Johnson because he's working a lot. He's working too much, I guess, to address the American people concerned with government overreach. And I don't know, address them in a way that says, I haven't yet been briefed on the situation, but I will demand a full investigation in cooperation with local authorities and answers, I don't know, regarding the apparent absence of body camera footage. But no, that would be too responsible for the man who goes to bed at night wondering, have I catered to the president enough today?
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.